Welcome, everyone, to the Leadership in Quarters podcast, the interview series where leaders come to share their perspectives on different leadership topics. I'm Josh Seldin, and today's guest is Manny Palachuk. Manny is a veteran business leader and agile strategist with over 35 years of experience across the computer and electronics industries. As a former owner of multiple successful businesses and a manager of IT and MSP service companies, he now focuses on coaching and mentoring organizations globally to reach their next level of growth. A recognized thought leader, Manny specializes in applying agile methodologies to business strategy and service delivery. He is the author of Getting to the Next Level, a blueprint for taking you and your business to the top, where he introduces his culture-centric framework for strategic development. His expertise is further highlighted in the Network Migration Workbook and his upcoming release, The Culture Imperative. In addition to holding degrees in electrical engineering and automated manufacturing technology, Manny is a seasoned educator. His commitment to leadership extends to the outdoors and athletics as a USCG captain, certified Taekwondo instructor, and former ropes course and sailing coach. So welcome, Manny.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Great to have you. And I'd love to jump right in. Our topic today is toxiculture, which I think in today's world is sadly very popular. So it'd be great to let everybody know what that is, what we can do about it. So I'd appreciate if you want, can we just jump right in and define what we think toxiculture is and what we're centering this whole episode around?
So when I think of toxiculture, it's anything that attacks a good culture in an organization. It's anything that's the opposite of what you're trying to have in your organization. And sometimes it's very toxic and to the detriment of people and to the organization. And sometimes it just smells bad. It's like just keeps people from being happy at work. And so It can really run from really bad to just not good.
I know people generally try to be very intentional on building their cultures. And a lot of times people are very successful in having a healthy culture where people do like to come to work, they feel valued, they feel heard. And then at some point, there seems to be a turning point where you start heading towards toxic culture. What are some of the signs that your culture is actually starting to shift from that healthy culture that you spent so much time and energy building into that toxic culture setting? And how do you counteract that and come back?
First, I think my experience has been a lot of smaller organizations think that culture is just going to come along with it, that they don't need to seed it or they don't need to see to it that it's set up or it's fed from the top down. But if you can get a good culture going and you know it, because people like to come to work, teamwork flows better. But when toxic culture starts to feed in, one of the first things I think that I've seen pretty consistently is this thing where you walk out of a meeting and somebody starts talking out of the side of their mouth. And they're like, yeah, I don't know about this. And we were all in the meeting. We're all in the same vibe. We all agreed. We all shook our head. But now somebody's descending from that. And it usually is. That's probably one of the biggest things that you're going to see when culture starts. And it's because somebody's not happy, that something changed, or something wasn't actually really the way they said it was when they came to work, or whatever it is. But that's typically it, is dissent of typically an individual. And then it's a matter of if they're left there to fester, do they bring other people down with them? And I think about it like a ship. It's like a mutiny. Pretty soon you got a mutiny on your hands. You're like, now what are we going to do?
Yeah, it definitely seems to spread. And I think a lot of times people think, constant harmony and agreement means we have a healthy culture. And I don't believe that's the case. It is good to have, you want some healthy pushback, healthy interaction, some tension. And so with that person, your example, I love your example because it happens all the time. Everybody doesn't need to agree in the room that we are all coming at it from the same place, but we agree that as a whole, that's the right direction for us to leave the room with. I may not have gotten my way, but we're going to hold hands outside the room. And when, to your point, when that happens and then somebody leaves and talks out of the side of their mouth, that's a problem because it means they're not with the rest of the team rowing in the same direction. It doesn't mean that it was always their idea and they were always in agreement. It just means, hey, we all aligned on this as a leadership team, and this is the direction we need to go.
Yeah. What's funny is it can happen because somebody, gosh, that was my idea and somebody stole it. And now I'm not getting credit for it.
Hmm.
Or little things that can wash away after time and they'll get over it and they'll move on. Or they'll speak up and say, hey, that wasn't really right. You took my idea or whatever. I'm talking about things where somebody's, yeah, it's just, I don't buy into that. You're probably familiar with the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and remember his co-author and ex-Navy SEALs. I love that book, and it may not be for everybody, but some of the principles are pretty straightforward. They talk about when they're in a room and there's a meeting, everybody gets to say their piece, everybody gets to dissent or agree or whatever. But when we leave here, that's what we're doing. Those guys, it's life is on the line, and it means everybody's going to do their thing. Now, business isn't as extreme. We might like to seem like it is some days, but it's not so much at stake as a life, but it's still important. And when somebody decides they're not going to go along with it, all energy and effort towards the vision, it's not all together. And it's noticeable by other people, it's noticeable by your results. It starts to show pretty quickly and easily. What's surprising though is how many companies look away because I call it that's the brilliant jerk.
Right.
I got to have her, him. They know more than anybody does about this thing. We can't let go of him. That's just the way he is. That's just the way she is. Yeah, bullshit. I'm sorry, but no.
No, that's right. It's so true. Everybody wants to latch on to their technical expert or who they view as their rock. And you said it perfectly. They overlook any toxic tendencies they have that start eroding the culture because you can't let that person go. But either you can let them go and build other people to the level or near the level that they are, or your culture is going to disintegrate
Yeah,
and you're going to be in a bad spot either way.
yeah. It's why one of my favorite tools is this thing that drives learning and growth inside an organization. You're constantly cultivating new people and evolving them, and you need three-level deep coverage for this fact that not only somebody goes on vacation, somebody dies, whatever can happen, but also you have the ability to let somebody go. But you'd be surprised. I've seen an owner who, to this day, will not get rid of his brilliant jerk because he's afraid that guy who showed up at his organization, brought some clients with him, will take those clients, and that will be like 25% of his business. Dude, you built this problem,
Yeah.
but you've got to figure it out or you're never going to get free. And then on the other hand, for 15 years, I've been coaching people. One of the first things we do, employee profiles and assessments. We talk to people and we figure things out. And usually there's somebody they've either got to get in line or get off board. And when it is somebody that's toxic, the minute they leave, it's just like this breath of fresh air. And I literally had a company who the business strategy for the quarter was get your wife out of the business so she can go be a mom and have babies. And you're beyond the initial stage. You don't need her anymore. Get her out of the business. And then we got to replace this guy because every time you guys go on vacation, he holds you up for a raise because, oh, you guys are leaving me here to babysit and all these other things. And then finally, when the guy left, they were just like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And it's funny because matter of a few months go by, pretty soon they just never look back. And they were like, why did it take so long? Why was it so hard to do that? And yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, everybody's so afraid of the unknown, and especially when you have somebody like that, you don't know what'll happen once they leave. And that should be one trigger. And you already said this. That should be one trigger that my business cannot run if I have one sole person I'm relying on. So how do I build those skills deep and make it so, heck, if they win the lottery and they leave tomorrow,
Yeah.
they're going to leave your business high and dry. You don't want to put yourself in that position. So you need to build those skills and that capability around assuming that person leaves at some point, whether forcefully or they decide to, but you gotta prepare for life after them.
Yeah. And in small companies, I don't want to make an excuse, but small companies, when they're startups or with their initial, they don't really have a choice. There's like
Right.
me, I went out on business. I started a business. I lured some guy I went to college with away and said, hey, you want to be one of my techs? And then you add another person, you add another person. But at some point, you do have a choice. And you start to evolve three-level deep coverage as you get big 15, 20, 30 people. But when you're 15, 16 people, aside from like marketing, you might only have two-level deep. You might only have one level deep on sales. But your techs are the key people. That's just, there's no excuse for it. And I hate to say this, but I had an owner of an organization die. He passed away. And with him, besides the vision just vaporizing and other things, his skill, there was nobody that could do what he did. And this is the same thing. There's a book called The E Myth Revisited. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Oh, it's a fantastic book. It's This guy is a story he tells about this lady who's got a bake shop and she's got a great business, but she can't scale. And they figure out that, same as all small business, you own a job. You're the only person. You have to systematize everything, and then you can work on the business, not in the business. So that's very key. And so this is the same thing. The reason I put it in place is not just so that you can get rid of the brilliant jerk if you ever decide to, you're not held hostage, but also so that you are no longer the person that's holding that company together. You can go work on the business, not in the business. So the 3-level deep has got a lot more than reach, but it gives you options. It gives you opportunities. It keeps you from being held hostage by your own crew.
Yeah, and that is so important. So often you do see that one person who's holding everything together and they leave. And it does get tough. And it's never permanent. And I feel like everybody thinks it's permanent, but it never truly is on the technical side. But it makes me wonder, hopefully you can shine some light because you gave an example of the founder and the owner that passed away. When you've got that person who may have started and intentionally built that healthy culture, I know you mentioned a lot of people just hope the culture magically poofs out of nowhere. So this person put the work in, they founded their company, or they're the leader that everybody relies on, and they leave. And now the vision is gone, and now the culture builder is gone, and the protector is gone. How do those organizations then move on and keep that culture consistent and not start trending towards toxic culture now that their safety net is no longer there?
I hate to say it, my experience has been they don't. I've seen companies merge and one company go, oh, they've got a really good culture and we're a smaller organization. We're going to buy them. We get enough money. We're going to get the owner out. They've got a good culture and we're going to adopt and pull in their culture and their processes or whatever. And when the two merge, this guy's not okay with it. She's not okay with it. They don't like those people. Like you got a marriage, you got the Brady Bunch marriage, and it's not TV, so not everything works out. Somebody goes, forget this, I'm out of here. I saw one company that the company that got bought, the service manager and his wife, who was the service coordinator, 6, 9 months in, left. And they're like, no, we're not doing this.
Wow.
And what they ended up with was they had the same culture they did at the original organization. The culture over here fell apart because the owner was no longer in on it, because there was a new vision. And so it's just not so easy. So my experience has been it's very rare that it's going to stick together, but there's a way around that. When the owner, one of my favorite examples is what's his name? Zappos, Tony Hsieh.
Oh, yeah.
I admired him before he passed away. He had said, when I'm gone, I want people to be coupled to the vision and not to me. And he made that a point. Don't couple to me. And the company moved on and it looked great. Look at Southwest Airlines. Not the same. The principal leaves, and he was the motivator for that culture. Another example, Apple, with the things they went through. There were people who were like, they would do anything Steve Jobs told them to do. They would follow him into deep water.
Yep.
So when he's gone, things start going sideways. They bring him back. Everything's okay again. He's gone again. Now they're on their own and they're figuring it out, but it's just not the same as if he had stayed there. But you don't want to do that. You want to do a Tony Hsieh where you set up the vision and the mission and the values, and the people are coupled to the vision and the mission, and they believe in the values, and they bring the human element, and that culture will survive. The owner can pass away as long as everybody just doesn't go, you completely lose heart because of the loss. That organization has a chance. They've got a chance. I'm not saying it's magical, but that's it.
So a lot of times people have trouble, especially leaders, separating themselves from that energizing statement, that vision, what they're trying to build. And then obviously the organization has issues separating them as well. What are some things that you've seen are successful ways, maybe Zappos is an example, where a leader has been able to say, this is the vision, here are the values, here's everything you should believe in. I'm going to be some of the energy behind it, motivating everybody, but I'm not necessarily always the driving force. You now believe in this and I can step away and not have that negative repercussion happen. What are some ways to actually enable that work?
It has to be somebody who is not self-centered and really does get that they're trying to build something bigger than them for the world. And to me, so let's start with what a vision to me is. The vision is, what is the world going to look like if we are successful at what we do? So you paint that beautiful picture and you tell an enticing story and people go, okay, and they get on board and they want to go do that. And if that's still true, whether you exist in the room or not, and you're the ship's captain, you got to pull out the map and show everybody where we're going and remind them of that when we're in a storm. If something happens to you, will they still remember? And if they're still into the vision and they're up for the mission, they'll stick. And
Right.
so it's got to be somebody that does not, again, like Tony Hsieh, it's not about them. Perfect examples from movies. And I love movies. I want to do a thing called What Can We Learn About Culture from Name of Movie? The Goonies. But The Miracle, the movie The Miracle, that guy was hardcore on this team, but they had that vision. He painted it and they went, like, if something happened to him, it would have been one of those stories where the guy passes away and they still go win the gold. They knew what they wanted, and he was building them as a team, not for him. He was building them as a team so they could go achieve this thing. And I think that's like a really good example.
Yeah. And that's so important for the leader to successfully communicate the why, the vision, and everything, because so many leaders today do have that ego and are self
Yeah.
centered around, I'm at the top and everybody reports to me and everybody has to do what I say. But making sure that the culture and the business is at the forefront. And as you said, it's not about me. And what people don't realize is the higher you go into leadership, it's less about showing what you can do and more about showing what your team can do. And it's really you through them. You paint that vision, you enable them, you build their capability, you build this foundation of these systems. They execute with excellence. And yes, it looks really good for them, but it also looks really good for you. And a
Yeah.
lot of leaders aren't making that mindset shift these days.
And if you're trying to build something great, typically you go, I want to build a thing and I would like you to help me. But there's a book called The Good to Great, and the author, Jim Collins, talks about first who and then what, the
Mhm.
right people together, and then go, okay, now what are we going to go do? And he also talks about another great story, the race to the South Pole and the leaders of these two teams. One team ends up everybody's dead, basically, all but cannibalize each other. The other team, unbelievably, all make it. And it's just amazing the story. If you were to go look it up, it's a year and a half or something before they'd gone on this expedition. Anyway, but it wasn't about him. He was the driving force, but he kept telling them what we are out to do, not what I'm out to do. And I think that's probably the biggest distinction. Any leader could change things drastically with one letter. Go from one letter I to two letters we, right? Add one
Mhm.
letter. That's simple.
Yeah, and I love that because that's the first thing that I was taught when I started with the company that I'm with is you don't say I, you say we. As a
Yeah.
team, we do this. If we fail together, we win together. And it really reinforces the point that you brought up in the beginning where when you leave that room, it is a we. I can give my opinion. I can be a part of this team and a leg of this, and I can go and help build it internally. But then when we walk out as one unit, as a we instead of an I, and language is so important, and everybody kind of brushes that off to the side. And I'll talk the way I talk, and I've always talked like this, and they don't understand the impact that some of the things that they say really have on people.
As a coach, I learned a long time ago. I go to work for a company, and from day one, I meet employees or we have a meeting, and I'm using the term we. What are we doing for marketing? What are we doing for this? And sometimes I get these looks like this guy just planted himself in here. And the answer is they realize very quickly, yeah, I came on board your team. I'm not this guy that's going to create miracles. I'm part of your team and I'm going to help set us up for success, which is my
Right.
favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
Set people up for success. And so the minute you say that, they realize this guy isn't here about himself. He planted himself in this team. He's part of us, we, not him.
Mhm.
It's powerful.
Yeah, definitely. And I do wonder with these companies, in my opinion, a lot of the companies focus on what I would call the metrics or the technical side of things, the operations. But in my opinion, when you only focus on that side and not the human element side, and you use the phrase human element already, I also see that's when culture starts to then transition to that toxic culture side. What are some of the important human elements that we need to make sure that we keep our eyes on as a leader or a leadership team to make sure we're not tunnel vision just on the technical things, but we're also including the human elements to prevent us from going towards the toxic culture?
I think this is where all these ideas that came about in the late 90s and early 2000s about having like Google and their space for employees and things like that is leaning into the fact that you want eclectic group of people and a diverse mindset. And corporate think typically goes, but we want to standardize cubicles and things for the cost purposes. And they forget about the human element. Like I worked in government offices for years, Bonneville Power Administrations in Portland, Oregon. And we always talked about how the building was dead because there's these fake plants, or there might be real plants near the elevator, and there are no windows and there's cubicles. And all you got to do to feed the human element is let people bring something to their cubicle, let them put up things. It's surprising how simple it is, but the two conflict. Corporate priorities of systematizing and making everything the same and cookie cutter and expenses says we can't do that. Whereas if you go, yeah, or we can let up on that and have a little area where people actually, as a couch, people can come. It's so simple to do things like that, to let people be who they're going to be and who they want to be instead of having to literally turn on the corporate person, walk in the door, stiff neck, go home. I think that's one of the key elements there.
Hmm. Yeah, you're never going to get the best out of anybody unless they can bring their true selves to work. And it is exhausting trying to just be somebody you're not or be a different version of you and not be truly who you are. And that's not to say, I will say, I'm a firm believer in systems. That's how we
Oh,
are
yeah.
consistent across the boat. But
Yep.
there are times where we over systematize things, and your examples are spot on. And that's when you kill creativity and you kill the personality of people. And a lot of times that's the reason we brought them on the team in the first place, is because
Yeah.
of who they are, because they are different and diverse. And I don't need another two of me on my team. One is more than enough because
Right.
I need diversity of thought and diversity of perspective. And if I set up so many systems that I kill that in somebody, then I'm just doing a complete disservice to not only the company, but the culture that you are trying to build.
Yeah. It's funny. Watch the curve from a small organization up to a publicly traded corporation, and you'll see creativity and the human element just die off again, unless you got a really unique place. IKEA, Zappos. But I think that what's sad today is culture, everybody says they want it. And when they start working at what it takes to have a good culture in a larger organization, it's just really expensive and it's hard. And there's all this free will involved and it just gets sticky. And yeah,
Yeah, it's effort that we have to put in. Everybody wants it to be like a light switch. I flip the light switch on and we magically have great culture here. And it takes effort, it takes time, it takes energy and money. And I may have to over communicate things and make sure I'm talking to people. And I can't sit and do my thing over here that I wanted to go do because I'm going to go build relationships and capability in people over here. And the most important thing, in my opinion, is the trust that you build. And I think it gets back to your first example and this one where, you will maybe have these naysayers and you have your own ego sometimes where I want to hear my own ideas and not what anybody else thinks. But if I'm building this trust, I need to make sure that person who walked out of the room not agreeing with everybody else had a safe enough space to bring their opinion up in the first place. Because it could just be they're like, hey, nobody ever listens to me anyway. Why would I even speak up in this meeting? Or you have this culture you're trying to build, and I'm this leader who has this big ego, and I haven't cultivated this trust. And when somebody does speak up and give me their idea so we can go try something new that could be amazing, I shoot them down because it doesn't match with my idea.
I literally just did a video short for YouTube the other day where I was talking about the kind of culture you create. And is it the kind of blame culture or is it thrive culture? And if somebody comes up with something and everybody's going to make fun of them or they're going to get ridiculed or it's going to get shot down, or are you going to go put a push pin in that? Let's hang on to that idea. It can be good. Let's keep moving and celebrate wins and things like that. And it's really subtle. It can be really subtle,
Yeah.
but it's surprising how quickly some people will just go stand on the wall and just keep their mouth shut. But that has to do with values and the human element. You want people who are willing to speak up. And every company's different. What I think I want in the human element, if I were building a company, it would depend. If I'm building a restaurant, I worked in restaurants for years when I was young. The human element I am after are people that are just love food, love to see people enjoying a meal.
Hmm.
That's part of the human element. And I know what those people look like and how they act. If I'm building an IT company, I want the geekiest people that love to spend all of their time in the middle of the night trying to solve a problem because it pissed them off. It's a different kind. And those are the human elements, but you've got to let that thrive. And again, we're back to that's hard to do because we're trying to get something done. Let's everybody focus. Let's everybody wear the same uniform and talk the same talk and chant the same chant and do this stuff. And there's a certain place for that when you're rowing, when you're hard at it. But when you're not, you got to let people be people and let that come through. And if it doesn't, you get what you get.
Yeah, and it has to be a balance, obviously, because you can't have a very simple decision that needs to be made, and you keep it an open conversation that lasts for 6 hours, and
Right.
because everybody wants to let their opinion be heard multiple times in that conversation. But allowing them to speak, allowing them to feel heard. And again, everybody thinks when you have a successful culture, we're going to go with everybody's idea all the time. And that's not it. We're going to pick one thing. If you've got six people in the room and they all have six different ideas, you're going to go with one idea, and five people aren't going to have their idea picked. But if those five people feel heard and feel valued and respected, that we didn't say no, we said we'll put a pin in it, or here's the reason that may not be right for this specific situation, but I can think of another situation that would work for. As long as you value and show that you care about what they're saying, then they'll be willing to say it again next time. And maybe the next time they're the one with the multi-million dollar idea. But
Yeah.
we just stifle creativity and we stop it from happening. And then, as you said, they're just going to stand in the corner and keep their mouth shut until the meeting's over, walk out, not say a word. And now that person could be going towards toxic culture, maybe on their own, but also maybe because of how we're leading our organization.
So I'm going to throw something out there.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the devil's advocate, but to be realistic, I do a keynote and I talk about the culture imperative. And one of the things is it actually doesn't matter if you're trying to take over the world or you're trying to make it a better place. It's the same. You still have a vision, a mission. You still have values. They're far different. And you still have the human element, like pirates. There's a certain ilk of people that are going to fit in and they're ruthless, etc. You got the human element. So it's not like this is all about good and the good guys, white hat, and everything else. Truth is, it doesn't matter. It would not matter if you're trying to take over the world. You still have to have the vision and the mission and the values and the human element. And the values determine who get in and who don't, who stays and who has to go. And it's funny because it's like we're talking about the good side of it and
Right.
thinking about we want to be encouraging. But if you want to be a ruthless day trader company that takes over the entire market and makes $2 billion in a whatever, then who are you going to hire for? You're going to hire for people who are stifling, who do shut down ideas, who shoot them down fast and quick. And those who walk away and put their eyes down and their tail between their legs, they don't belong here. That too is a culture. And what's toxic there is the feel-good person over here who wants to be heard but that can't speak up. Nope, you got to go. So it's really funny. There's a whole spectrum and it applies on both sides, but it still comes down to those four things: vision, mission, values, and the human element.
I love that example because you're right. We do focus so much on the positive side of how to build that positive culture. The beauty of this approach is it works wherever. As you said, doesn't matter. Restaurant, pirates, corporate America, wherever. And as long as you keep those four elements in front of you, your team can be successful in whatever you are trying to drive towards and strive towards, and whatever type of culture that you're trying to build that successfully supports that vision that you have.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be good. I prefer that, but I'm just being realistic.
Exactly. It could be anywhere. No, that's great. Manny, before we wrap up, any final thoughts that you want to share with everybody?
Yeah, I think, again, I think I alluded to it early. So many small companies, they think that they can put off culture and let it grow from the bottom. And I said, if you do that, you're going to get what grows from beneath, weeds and all. Active and have culture come from the top down and make it matter early. Don't wait until you're 15 or 20 people. Start your culture early, because otherwise you're going to have to figure out how to get people out of the organization that you let stay there that really are now really been an anchor for a long time. So it doesn't matter how small your organization is, culture matters.
Yep. And that's so true. It's so much easier to bring everybody along for the ride as you're going. And then as you bring new people in, bring them along with you, as opposed to I'm 15 people deep and I haven't focused on culture. Now I have to train and get these new people to acclimate to this culture I want and bring these other people back up to where I am also. So very, very
figure out how to get rid of the ones that don't, they're like, oh, this culture's not working. We got great people, new people, but they don't like Joe because Joe doesn't belong here.
Yeah. Exactly. That is a great way to end this off. Just to remind everybody, this is Manny Palachuk. I will have all of his information in the YouTube video and the posting that we have. I'll have the information on his books as well and any links to him so you can look more into this. And like he said, he's been a coach for a while. A lot of great ideas. I'm sure you've loved everything we've heard so far. And there's a lot more that you can learn from him as well. So if If you want to rewatch this or any other episodes, you can follow and subscribe to the podcast on all the podcast platforms that we have, all the audio platforms, Apple, Pandora, Spotify, all of those. It's my Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Leading Quarters. And you can email me with any questions or ideas that you may have for future episodes, or if you're interested in being a guest on a future episode at leadingquarters@gmail.com. But Manny, I really appreciate everything that you brought. I do love the way we ended this, knowing that this could exist anywhere, positive or negative, but these things are true foundational elements that work. They're proven to work, whether you want to take over the world or just build a healthy culture in your company. And I truly appreciate everything that you shared today.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate it, Josh. I had a lot of fun too.